Welcome, friends, to Tulip, the first book in the Secret of Earth series, Chapter 2. Tulip walked out of a small, red-bricked building, trying to keep her balance. It was like she was walking for the first time in her life. She started hearing soft whispers, but couldn't find their owners. She gave up looking for the owners of the whispering, and quickly started along the worn dirt path. She didn't want to be near the guard any longer than she had to be. The nearby village was exotic and new, and as unfamiliar as the guard had been. The buildings were small and made from wood. The roofing was made from straw and hay and dead grass. The people were all about the place, going on with their daily lives and chores. Mothers dragged their children along. They wore tattered dresses and worn bandanas. The boys and men wore pants and shirts that were just as shredded. There was a slight buzz of excitement along with the ongoing, unidentifiable whispers. Tulip kept hearing her name along with the tales of history that Tulip wasn't familiar with. She walked by a thin lady in a tattered dress and apron, talking and making a face at her, but she couldn't hear a thing over the whispers that had started growing louder as she kept walking along the dirt road. She kept going until she found herself at the edge of a small, dusty village. Suddenly she couldn't breathe. The sight was just so amazing. The meadow was wide and beautiful. The flowers were everywhere, and a few trees were scattered here and there. The grass was very tall, as though it was untouched since it sprouted out of the ground. The whispers, however, seemed to grow louder from the meadow, but there was no one in the meadow. "That must be where it's coming from," she gasped, but she was quieter than the others in the village. She took off running, leaving the dusty buildings of the village behind, and its unheard noises. Her heart was racing. No, it was soaring. Tulip felt it in her head as if it were about to burst from her skull. But she kept running. The field had been calling her, and no one else. Tulip didn't feel tired after running some length of the giant meadow. She only stopped at a blurred sight of a wilting flower. She pitied it, but didn't know why. She felt as if she had known she could have saved it if she were there sooner. She kneeled down beside it. She touched one of the dying petals. There was a dim flash of green light. Tulip gasped and fell backward in shock. When she looked back, the flower, it was slowly perking up, becoming vividly blue. "You are Tulip," the flower whispered. "Don't let people get you down. Just listen to us. Listen to the story we tell. Listen, and over time, you will learn to control your powers." It was brief and simple. The little speech was pretty, just as the blue flower, also very convincing. Tulip got up from the ground, dusted off her dress, and walked to the heart of the meadow. She sat down, placing her hands to steady herself to the ground. She shut her eyes and focused. She started to listen. Who you were no longer matters. Many shreds of grass cried. "Travel the world, to listen to many, and to know the ways of man like we do," shouted a nearby tree. "Focus on growing a flower of a tree. In a lot of practice, you will grow things unimaginable, effortlessly," a nearby dandelion chanted. Tulip listened to the words the plant had spoken. After that, there was too much chatter to decipher. She stood, looked at the meadow ahead, looked down. She placed her hands out with her palm to the earth. She closed her eyes and concentrated. She felt a tingle of excitement jump from her fingertips. When she opened her eyes and moved her hand to the side, there was a tulip where her hand had covered from her vision. It gently blown in the wind. "Good work, dear," it said in the most loving voice Tulip had ever heard. But of course, it was the only loving voice she had ever heard. "I may look like a tulip, but I'm showing you who you are and what you are. Be proud of this. Now my voice, on the other hand, is that of your mother, not your birth mother, but your creation mother. I am Mother Earth, your father, Time. We will allow you to live for eternity." The flower seemed very confident and serious. Tulip was well aware that she was different once she found out the plants talked to her, but she wasn't sure how it affected her over everyone else she had seen. Tulip was a little excited. She looked to the sky full of white, fluffy clouds. She wanted to impress her newly found mother and father by showing them how quickly she could adapt. She looked back at the ground, but away from the flower. She thought of a tree. She didn't know what kind of tree she was thinking of, but she knew she liked it. She placed her hand out like she did when she grew the little pink tulip. She kept hold of the tree in her mind. Before she knew it, there was a little cherry tree with pink blossoms already growing upon it. She smiled at her work. She liked the blossoms upon it. They were bright and young, as was she. "Hello, I'm a cherry tree. Aren't I lovely?" Tulip giggled some. She enjoyed being able to hear the plants. They were very kind and lovely. She decided to try to make the tree bigger and taller. Once again, she placed her hand out and focused on the tree. She enlarged it in her mind, and as she did, the tree grew larger and taller, just as she imagined it. When she looked at the once little tree, she was even prouder. She was a quick learner, and she was really happy with herself. She felt something brush at her feet. There were bright little flowers that weren't there before. "Plants must grow depending on my mood," she concluded. Without another thought, she took off running once more. She kept going and going, even when the sun started to set, pulling its beautiful, rose-tipped fingers to the ground. She kept going, but she stopped suddenly, catching sight of the fading line roses. She marveled at the sunset. It was the most wonderful, most beautiful, most amazing thing she had witnessed that day. She fell to her knees and let out a sigh. "This, my dear, is one of the many joys you will have to keep with you," said a little flower that grew next to her. I really don't know how I feel right now. You are amazed at the beauty of the sunset, since it is your first in your new life, my dear. Wow. Tulip was too stunned at the sunset to find any other word to describe it. It was all she had to say. Other than that, she smiled brightly. Her eyes glistened in the sun's setting rays. It was a beautiful sunset. Even when the sun's fingers turned darker from their rose colors to a lovely lilac purple. After she watched the most beautiful sunset, she took off again. It was a cold night. The cold felt wonderful. Tulip felt as though she was gliding more than she was running. She looked down and she saw ice beneath her feet, not grass like earlier. She had noticed her dress had changed too. Even in the dark, it was visible in the moonlight. The dress she was wearing was blue with a white line, and it was shorter, although she was wearing pants too. They were also blue, but of a lighter shade. She slid on the ice. She looked up to find that there was grass ahead, not ice. But she kept sliding across, going faster and faster. She jumped, spinning in the air, landing on her feet, and kept sliding on the ice. "That was awesome!" she shouted, skidding to a stop. "This is only one of your many forms," a flower said, just sprouting from within the earth. Tulip smiled. "Many forms? Wow. No, I need to keep going. I'll maybe get another form." She sprang into action and started to slide slowly, trying to control her new ice skating form. But Tulip slipped, and a wall of ice shot in the air. Whoa! Did this form do that? Yes. This form is ice. You can control ice. Cool! She laughed at her own pun. But the flower did not. It just vanished back into the earth. This is the end of Chapter 2. I hope to see you again next week to enjoy another chapter of Tulip, the first book in the SOE series. And remember, my name's Fate. I hope to see you again. Farewell.